Hey everybody, it's Jesse, and I'm back again for another installment of Social School. We are going to talk today about one of the most very important social skills that you can ever have, and that is something called empathic listening. And if you haven't heard of it before, and you think that you understand, what listening means and how to be a good listener, then maybe you do. But it's a complicated skill that takes a long time to master. And even though it seems simple, it is not as simple as it seems or as it sounds. And I will tell you, so we have been talking about social awareness or understanding the feelings of others. And as we get into this, we'll see that if you really want to understand what is going on with another human being, the best thing that you can do is be a good listener or be an empathic listener. And again, this is not a skill that we master overnight. And even though it seems very simple, there are a few different steps to it. There's a lot of information here. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and get into the social skill of empathic listening. So as we look at this, there are 4 basic steps to being an empathic listener. And the reason why this is so important is, again, if you really want to understand the feelings of another person, or if you want to be able to get along or connect with other people, you have to really listen. And when I say listen, I don't just mean, listening with your ears, because there is clearly a huge difference between hearing someone and actually listening to someone. And so when we look at empathic listening, this is going to be because you can listen with your eyes. Obviously, you need 2 good ears to be able to be a good listener, but also you need to use your brain and think about, what is really being said and what is going on with someone. And you have to pay attention, you have to care, and you also have to include these 4 steps to be an empathic listener. And so I'm going to break each one of these down. But before I do that, I'm just going to give you a quick overview. So we look at step 1, right? You're going to look at the person who's talking, obviously. You're going to think about what it is that they're saying, right? So actually care and pay attention. You're going to wait your turn to talk. And then lastly, and this might be the most challenging of the 4 steps for most of us, you have to respond back to the person in a way that lets them know that you understand not only what they're saying, but what they're actually feeling. And then if we do this and we do it correctly, then we're speaking. So let's go ahead and get into this and break it down. Step number 1, you want to look at the person who's talking. And the note says, face the person, establish eye contact, and use good listening posture. And so what this means to us is that we put our phones down, we stop doing what we're doing, and we take the time to actually look at the person who is talking to us. And this not only lets them know that we're really interested and we care about what they have to say, but also it's going to help us to be a better listener. So when you can stop what you're doing, face that person, establish good eye contact, and use good posture, you've taken the first step at being a good listener. If you've ever had somebody, who was talking to you, maybe it was a parent or a boss or somebody, and they're like, look at me when I'm talking to you, then maybe you understand the importance of this step. But it is very important for us to engage with the people who are actually talking to us. It shows that we care. It shows that, we're not distracted or anything, on our phones, busy doing this stuff. Or if you've ever had anybody talk to you while you're playing a video game or doing that kind of stuff. And if you were really honest with yourself, you know that you might think that you're hearing them, but you're not really listening. And so establishing that eye contact, looking somebody in the face, is really where this all starts. It's a sign of respect. It's a sign that you're paying attention, and it's a sign that you're ready to acknowledge what they have to say, and that what they say is important. We let people know that they are important when we look at them, when we acknowledge them. And what I mean by good listening posture is also that you are Obviously, you're facing them. You're not, covering your eyes and giving them this one. That you're really engaged, and this is very important when you're having a work conversation or in a job interview. You want to try to make that eye contact, and you want to, connect with that other person with your eyes. And that's why this first step is so very important. Stop what you're doing. If you're at work and doing the dishes, stop doing dishes. Or if you're in the middle of a task and someone is saying something important to you, stop what you're doing and take the time to really look at them and treat them like they matter. Step number 2, think about what is being said. And we show this sometimes by nodding our head, saying, yeah, I hear you. But also you want to listen for and think about, how is this person really feeling? And I'm going to get to this in just a minute. But as we listen, we not only want to hear the words that people say, but also we want to listen to how they are saying what they're saying. And in the lesson on nonverbal communication, I talked about paraverbals. And it's not really what a person says as much as how they say it that really conveys their meaning, their emotional message. And so we have to engage ourselves. We have to use our brains here, just like the young lady in this picture. We have to use our brains and really pay attention and really think about what is going on. And again, not only what the person is actually saying, but what is the emotional content? What is the feeling behind what they're saying if we want to be good listeners? Step number 2 can be a little harder than it sounds. Because if you're like me and you sometimes struggle with paying attention, then staying focused for the entire time that someone is speaking can be a real challenge. And specifically, the real challenge here is to try to read that person, use some of the clues, the nonverbal cues, the paraverbal cues, use some of that information to figure out, how they really feel. Because I've got a crazy idea here, and my crazy idea is that everything that everybody says has at least some tiny little bit of emotion to it or some kind of feeling. And every time someone talks to you, you can use this as an opportunity to tune in or pay attention to their feeling. And those feelings are important because that is the majority of the message. How serious is it, that thing that they're saying to me? And so as we look at this idea that every little bit of communication has at least some kind of feeling attached to it, we look at something, real super simple like, hey, what time is it? And maybe the feeling that's associated with that is just curiosity. But maybe somebody's in a hurry, or they expect you to get your work done. And so they say to you, hey, what time is it? And so those exact same words can mean very different things depending on how that message is delivered. And so again, we listen with our ears, we listen with our eyes, but we really think about, what is the feeling behind what they're saying? What kind of mood are they in? What are they feeling right now? Try to put yourself in their shoes if you want to be able to connect with them, to understand, and also then eventually to know how to be able to act or react or even interact with them. So we want to spend a lot of time on this one and really try to really think about, what is going on with this person who's talking to me. Step number 3. So the other thing that's really important is that, we wait our turn to talk, right? We're not fidgeting, we're not shuffling our feet, we're trying to be patient as listeners. And so as we think about this, for a lot of us, this can be difficult. And I will say that honestly, for me, step number 3 is the very most difficult, and I'll talk about why in just a minute. But we need to wait our turn to talk. And if you think about this, if you've ever had someone who interrupted you or didn't let you, speak or get a word in edgewise, you know how annoying that can be and how frustrating it is to be that person who is being interrupted. So we want to make sure that we wait our turn to talk. So as I just said, step number 3 for me is probably the very most difficult. And I don't know how it is for you guys, but in the neighborhood that I grew up in, right, when we were riding the bus or we were hanging out in the neighborhood, it was the person who talked the loudest, who talked the most, and who talked the fastest that got their way, right? So if we were trying to decide what to do, everybody's getting their ideas in and they're all trying to, talk over each other. And so unfortunately, I developed a bad habit as an interrupter, and it is sometimes very difficult for me to wait my turn and be patient. And so this is something that's, for some of us is going to be a lifelong struggle. Some people are good at waiting their turn to talk, some people not so much. And so the question becomes, how do you know when it's your turn to talk? Do you, wait for a person to pause, or, how do you know? I have been accused before of taking a lot of pauses when I talk around my house, and so sometimes my kids will interrupt me and they're like, "But Dad, you pause." And so it is hard sometimes to know exactly when it is your turn. A safe bet, especially in a workplace condition, if someone asks you a question, then it is definitely your turn to talk. If there is a pause of more than 3 to 5 seconds, then it's probably your turn to talk. And so another kind of issue that comes up here is, what do you do if you have something really important to say and that person just keeps talking, right? They're going for 30, 45 seconds, maybe they're talking at you for like 2 minutes, how do you know? And I've had some students before who will like literally raise their hands, and I'm not even talking about like in the classroom, but in my office sometimes younger students will do this. And I don't know if that's such a good way to do that, but sometimes if I have something really important to say, but I want to wait my turn to talk, I'll just put up a finger just like this. And that will let my listener know, that I have something that I want to say, and then maybe they will ask me that question, and eventually it will get to be my turn to talk. And so just want to say again, you want to try, especially in professional situations, don't be that rude person that interrupts. Don't be a Jesse and somebody that talks over, that other person. Waiting your turn to talk is how we show respect and how we show we care about what the other person has to say. Step number 4, you want to respond to the person who is speaking in a way that lets them know not only that you understand what they said, but also their emotion. And this means responding appropriately to their emotion. And for most of us, this is going to be the most difficult. And so if you think about what the person said, and maybe they're sharing something sad, or maybe, they're really happy, or maybe they're even angry with you, you want to be able to say something back to them that is about them, right? And not necessarily about you or whatever is on your mind. Because for a lot of us, as someone's talking, we're not really thinking about what they're saying. We're thinking about how we want to respond, or what clever thing that we can say, or what's really on our mind. And we as listeners sometimes get in a bad habit of trying to respond before really the other person is even done talking. And so if we wait our turn and it becomes our turn to talk, we want to make sure as good listeners that the first thing that we say back to somebody is something about them, about what they said, and we may even want to repeat back to them what they said to prove that we were really listening and being good listeners. So this step is so very important in being a good listener because of what can go wrong if you don't necessarily follow it, or you go in an opposite direction. People will definitely get an impression about you based on the way that you respond. And I know we're talking about listening, but we're heading into kind of talking about social skills in the workplace and those sorts of things. And being able to respond with the right kind of emotion is definitely a super important social skill in connecting with other people. And to do this, I'm going to give you an example of how badly, it can really go on, or how badly it can go. So let's imagine for a second that you're in the break room and you're hanging out, taking your break or whatever, and one of your coworkers walks in and you can tell that they're sad, there's something wrong, and they tell you, that they're a little bit sad because they just had to get their dog put down. And in your mind, immediately you're thinking, oh, wow, that sucks. But you don't respond to their emotion. And instead, what you do is, dog, well, guess what? I just got a new puppy. Do you want to see a picture, right? And so you show them a picture of your dog on the phone, and then for some reason they get mad at you and want to smack the crap out of you. And so, that's an extreme version. Obviously, hopefully most of us wouldn't respond that way. But we want to try to be sensitive to the feelings of others. Is this person going through a hard time? Maybe they just told you some good news and you want to be happy for them. So if someone, at work gets a promotion or they get a raise, and maybe in your mind you're thinking, oh man, I should have got that promotion or I should have got that raise. You want to make sure though that you can be happy for that other person. And this is where that empathy thing sort of, really kicks in. You want to feel the feeling with them. And so if they're sad, you can be sad with them. If they're happy, you can be happy with them. And then the question becomes, well, if they're angry and if they're angry at me, doesn't that mean that I should respond and I should get angry back at them? That does not mean that that's what you should do. And actually what you should do instead is say something back to them that lets them know that you're really angry. So if your boss gets in your face and you're like, he says, I can't believe you did that, and you're going to lose your job or whatever, you say, oh, okay, all right, I get it, I understand, you're very angry right now, and I understand why you're angry, and I'm going to do my best to fix it. And so sometimes repeating back to the person what they said is a very good choice. And when we get into the social skill of following directions, we're going to find out that repeating things back to someone, while it may feel awkward or seem strange, is not always a bad idea and often is a good idea. In fact, it can really help you to respond with the appropriate emotion. If you say to somebody, wow, I hear what you're saying, you're really sad right now, then that lets them know that you're paying attention and that you care about what they're saying. So where I want to wrap this video up is with this list right here, and it's some things that I found, or it's a thing that I found on the internet, and it's 9 strategies to develop empathic listening, and it's just some good reminders for those of us who really struggle with this skill. And it's some things we've talked about already, and it's also going to involve some things that we get into in the future. Number 1, it's not about you, right? So good listeners don't make the conversation about them. They focus on the other person. Number 2, put away your phone or turn off the video game or turn off the TV, whatever it is. Stop what you're doing and really listen. And if you do that, then number 3, you become an active listener. You really pay attention. You care about them. Number 4 says refrain from criticism. And what that means is don't pick apart what they say, right? If you're going to be a good listener, if you're going to be an empathic listener, then you're there for them and you're really going to listen, especially if it's a boss or a customer. Then it's not your time to criticize them or to tear them apart. It's your time to really listen and think about what they say. Hopefully you do that with an open mind. 5 says adjust your body language, and what that means is, again, try to mimic or mirror, what that other person has to say with your body language. So if somebody's sad, then, maybe you can have that look on your face. If somebody is crying and you're laughing, then that body language, that reaction isn't going to get you anywhere. Number 6, paraphrase your conversation partner. And this means paraphrase or say back to the person what they said. Show them that you're listening by repeating it back to them. Number 7, you ask open-ended questions. And as I get into this later and we talk about the social skill of starting a conversation, especially in the workplace, you want to ask something called open-ended questions, which are questions that, don't have a yes or no answer. And because I'm going to get into that more, I won't talk about it a lot. Number 8, stop giving unsolicited advice. So if you think about the very best listeners they aren't necessarily people who are trying to solve your problems or fix you or fix whatever's going on with you. The very best listeners, they just do that. They just listen. They're not, they're not counselors. They're not trying to, make everything better. They're just being there and they're just listening. And then the last one of these says, don't fill up the silence. And what that means is if you want to be a good listener, you're going to talk less. And for most people, this is a very significant struggle because for most of us, we would way rather talk than listen. But it's okay for there to be silence. It's okay for there to be pauses. And you really want to, give that person time to say what they have to say, to speak their piece, to speak their mind. And so we don't necessarily have to talk over every quiet moment. There can be moments where there is good silence. And I love this list because it's kind of like my 4 steps, but it's a little bit expanded and it's got some good reminders in it. And so there you have it, everybody. That's the social skill of empathic listening. I will tell you that this is the last video for the month of February, and as we move forward, we're going to get into some more social skills that are going to be especially important in the workplace. But I will tell you, the number one skill, the most important thing that you need to master in interacting with other people in a social way is being a good listener. And again, this seems like such a simple thing, but it can be very, very difficult. And so as we move forward, I want to challenge all of you to be better listeners. And that's for your friends, it's for your family members. It's in all areas of your life. And if you can really master this skill, then, that makes you really a good person. And so your ability to listen is going to determine, your success in the workplace. And so want to thank everybody for watching this video. I appreciate your time so much. And I will see all of you in March. Bye-bye.